Next up, we have a speaker who helped start a transfer pricing company here in Chicago. And with him as the chief sales officer, his company achieved double-digit revenue growth every year to establish Ceteris as the largest independent provider of transfer pricing services in North America. It eventually grew to over 13 offices worldwide and was named to Inc. magazine's 50 fastest-growing private companies in America for 5 years running. He's currently the managing director in Duff & Phelps' transfer pricing practice. And as he's going to tell you, let's heave ho the status quo with Christopher Desmond.
It was 2003. Ever remember 2003? The Cubs, they almost made it to the World Series. Not too far from here, just south of here. They were in the pennant race. At that time, I was a unique place in my career. I was a senior consultant in one of the big four accounting firms. I was in an area and a profession of extremely smart individuals. People that were MBAs, people that were JDs, people that were PhD economists. Somehow we dragged them out of academia with their corduroy blazers and their, yes, they did rub off on me a little bit. But one of my mentors, who happened to be one of those PhD economists, he was the guy that hired me out of graduate school when I was at another former Big Four firm. And he invited me to lunch. So I said, okay, let's get together to lunch. I'm sure we want to catch up. I go meet him, and get this, he's wearing flip-flops, shorts, and a goatee. Yeah, goatees were cool then, please. And he said, listen, right now he was in the best part of his career. He was one of the national practice leaders of the profession that I was in, a position that I hope to achieve someday. And he said, listen, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to start our own independent firm. And I said, you know what? Good for you. You should go ahead and do that. That's fantastic. It's crazy, but good for you. And then he threw the curveball. He said, and I want you to join me. Wow, I got goosebumps. I got excited. I got nervous. I freaked out. I said, well, let me think about it. And so I went back and I went to talk to my wife about it. And in life, when is the best time to take a risk? When's the worst time to take a risk? Every one of you right now are in the audience, and you've been in a situation where you're offered an opportunity to take a risk. And you're thinking through it and you get all excited about it, but then you're like, okay, there's lots of reasons why I shouldn't do that. For me, I was in a great position in my career. I was one step away from partner. I was married. We had a mortgage. We had a son on the way. I needed health insurance. I wasn't going to take that risk. Well, in 2003, the Cubs did not make it to the World Series. Breaking news to you guys. But that winter, we did have a baby boy. Middle name Wrigley. A very loving wife. And we decided, you know what? We're going to take that risk. And so I did. One of the things we did when we started the company is that we were all working out of the house because nobody had an office yet. We started from grassroots. And we decided to rent a conference room downtown Chicago and have a whiteboard meeting. People have whiteboard meetings all the time. But for us, the whiteboard meeting was, let's put a line down the middle and let's talk about all the attributes that we don't want to be known for. What we saw in our historical areas of the career that, you know what, let's make the company not known for that. But then on the other side, let's focus on the things that we did want to be known for, things that we would love our clients to know. So we didn't want to have hierarchy. We didn't want to have politics. We didn't want to have administrative processes. We didn't want to not be in touch with our clients. But what we did want, the things that we did want to focus on, was trust, quality, technical, personable, the experts in our industry. We came out of that meeting pumped. We were psyched. We were going to change the world. The next day, I got back to my home office at the time, And what we did is I got a list of companies in Chicagoland that I said, okay, I'm going to start calling them because they're going to love to hear from me. They're going to love to hear from me because we got a new business, and they're going to want to do business with me. So I started making calls. Hi, I'm Christopher Desmond. I'm with X company, and I do Y services. And click. Hi, I'm Christopher Desmond, and I'm with X company. We do Y services. Our company is great because we do A, B, and click. Hi, I'm Christopher Desmond. I'm with X company, and we do Y services. And I think we're great because we do A, B, and C. And I'd like to set up a meeting with you, and click. I did this for 6 months. I made about 50 to 100 calls a day. It was insane. I was getting nowhere. I was absolutely failing. Everything that I set out to do was not happening. I was getting nervous too because at the start of the company, it's not as if I was offered a salary. That was my salary. I was offered equity, saying, hey, if we do well, you do well, we all do well. Well, we weren't doing well. And I had to think about this. I had a new baby boy. I had all these other responsibilities, those risks lists that I had. And I had to think through, well, what should I do? So I was about ready to throw in the towel. I was thinking maybe I have failed and I need to go back to where I was at because I was offered to go back and that could be a possibility. So I decided to talk to a few of the other leaders that I had in my life, business leaders. And I talked to one of them. One of them was a fraternity brother. He had his own, he had a sales call center that he ran for a Fortune 100 company. He was the head of it. And he told me some great tips on how to leave voicemails, emails, follow-ups, proposals. And that was great. It was helpful. But the best thing that happened to me is I talked to my Uncle Steve. My Uncle Steve, very successful businessman in Chicago. Uncle Steve told me, treat people like they're human. What does that mean? Treat people like they're human. You have to know Uncle Steve. Uncle Steve was a very successful entrepreneur in Chicago, and he had all these quirky things that he did. He had a box of Hershey bars with him at all times, one place or another. He'd go around handing out Hershey bars to people, and every time people saw Uncle Steve, they would be like, Steve, how are you? And they would want to do anything for him. And it was real. But the thing that was really interesting is Steve would hand out a Hershey's bar to him, and he said, hey, how are you? He would say their name. He would know their relatives. And best of all, Steve knew something about them inside, and he'd be always following up with them. And then I realized something. And then I realized, you know what? Uncle Steve's got a point. I just need to be myself. I don't need to be some fake guy that's trying to do sales. I just need to be human and treat people like people. And I realized, you know what? I was doing everything all wrong. People do not want to be called to be told what I wanted. People don't want to be called and told what my company did. People don't want to hear scare tactics on how they should be getting business. And they sure don't want to get a cold call from a guy that sounds like Guy Smiley from Sesame Street. What they do want to know is how you're going to solve their problems and how you're going to help them with their goals. And how and people, when they hire people, they want to hire people they want to enjoy working with. It was my aha moment. It was my moment and I realized, gosh, I think I know how to do things differently. And I stopped making sales calls. I started talking to people. It changed everything I did in the way I was going about doing things. One of the things I noticed is that we would have company meetings every year. And when we have a company meeting, we would invite everybody from the company there, all the way down from the back office to the admin, all the way up to the CEO. And the CEO of the company would start the meeting by saying, check your titles at the door, check your egos at the door. When you come in here, we have our processes that we've put together over the years. Nothing's sacred. Everything is meant to be challenged. How many meetings do you go to that start like that? Well, one of the best things that came out of this is that every year when we had our meetings, we got great creatives. How do we approach the market differently? How do we do things differently? Some of the best ideas came from the associates in our company that just got out of the university. And they would inspire us to think differently. It was fantastic. And one of the programs that came out of that was the White Whale program. White Whale? Moby Dick? Let me explain it to you. So what we did is we said, okay, operate with a clean slate. Focus on 10 companies that you'd like to work with. And that's it. Pick 10. So I picked my 10 companies. It's like, who would be cool to work with? What type of companies? I picked Nike, ADM, Harley-Davidson motorcycles. Oh, Walgreens. Definitely on the list. Actually, it was. And what we did is we started doing things differently, not only when it came to the way we talk to companies, but the way we'd market to companies. One of the things that was in my predecessors, what we'd do is you'd send out holiday cards. They would pre-print cards, the partners would sign them, and they mail out to the clients. And that was neat, but we decided to flip it and do something totally different. We said, let's not do that. Let's think about when people are coming back from vacation, and that's when they need the boost. That's when they're looking to do something different. And so getting back to the grind. One of our mailers, getting back to the grind, picture of an old-fashioned coffee grinder, says, hey, wishing you the best to start to the new year. Here's a Starbucks coupon. Go back and knock it out of the year this year. You know what was different about that? It was about them. It was not what we did, our services. It was about the people we were working with, working for. And that message meant so much because we were doing things differently. The White Whale program was very successful, and I realized that I no longer was calling people. I was more talking to people. I left voicemails for people differently. I did work for them differently. I got to know my clients. And the biggest surprise of them all is that I realized that I started making great friends with not only my colleagues, but my clients. One of the things that happened is I was in a big project in South America. We just finished it up. And a couple weeks later, I get a phone call from the client. I was at the Seattle SeaTac Airport. I remember this distinctly. I pick up my cell phone. He goes, hey, amigo, ¿qué pasa? I said, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And he said, hey, I got a question for you. Okay. He said, listen, it's not work related. A bunch of us are getting together and going on a fishing trip. Some of my good friends from college and some of my colleagues, and we want to know if you want to go with us. I said, sure, I like fishing. I'll go with you. He goes, great. We're going to the Amazon. I went to the Amazon with my client, but also with my friend. Had one of the best trips of my life. Went there and I learned the sport of fly fishing too, something that I today love to do. But one of the neat things about that trip is that the whole week never talked about work, never talked about the company. It was about people. I got back from that trip and I realized something. I was doing work for 5 out of the 10 companies on my White Whale list. I no longer was making phone calls. Our competition was freaking out. They were trying to figure out how did a company of less than 10 people start doing work for companies like Nike, Harley-Davidson, ADM. They didn't get it. They're wondering, what were we doing differently? A few years later, our company grew to be one of the largest independent consulting firms in our practice area, recognized by Inc. magazine and many other locations. The firm last fall was purchased by another large public company, and we had a very successful ride. I know that many of you are sitting in the audience and you're saying to yourselves, I am hearing some of the most inspiring speakers I've ever heard from before, and I think that's fantastic. But what I question is, what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do? Are you going to go back to the status quo? Are you tomorrow going to get up and make your coffee and check your emails and go through the regular routine? Next time you're at a meeting with all your colleagues or a bigger corporate meeting, are you going to sit back, take notes? Are you going to reserve and not take a risk and not talk about those things that you think might actually influence what's going on in the company? Or I challenge you with this. what if you did your own white whale list? What if you got up and created a list on how you might want to change your group, your company, or perhaps change something about yourselves?